Hello and welcome to this very special session. I'm Daniel Nowack, Managing Director of Yunus Social Business and your host today. This coming June, we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary. Over a decade now, we have been using business to achieve the 3 zeros set out by our co-founder, Professor Yunus: zero poverty, zero unemployment, and zero net carbon emissions. To mark this important milestone, we want to take a moment to celebrate with some of our key partners who've helped us to get here. Without a doubt, one of the most important partners is Boston Consulting Group. So I'm excited to welcome Wendy Woods, Vice Chair, Social Impact, Climate and Sustainability at BCG. And I'm just as excited to have our co-founder and chairman, Professor Yunus, and our CEO and other co-founder, Saskia Bruysten, with us. So let's jump right in and explore that journey of an unlikely but immensely impactful partnership. Saskia, can you tell us a little bit about how this partnership between YSB and BCG began, and what were the main elements of it?
Sure, Daniel. More than happy to do so, because I guess in some ways I may be partly the combining factor. I started my career at BCG, both in the Munich and later in the New York office, and worked there, learned the ropes of management consulting. And then in my late 20s, early 30s, had the chance to actually meet Professor Yunus at a speech that he held at London School of Economics. And so that was also the beginning of Yunus Social Business, which is obviously all about creating social impact through business approaches. And so, of course, once I sort of jumped into this new role, I thought, like, I want to bring my old history with me. I want to bring BCG with me, and their skill set would be incredibly helpful to ensure that social business is something that becomes really mainstream. We've been able to work with BCG now for over a decade. They've been helping us with pro bono consulting support, but also with secondees, people that have been working with us on a longer term basis, and also here and there have opened doors for us. We've conducted research together. So many of those elements were part of our global impact partnership that we've had now over a decade.
Thanks. Yeah, I can also still remember back in the day when I first met Professor Yunus. It does have a profound impact on your life, I would say. Wendy, can you think back on some of those moments of positive impact, hopefully, or a win from the early days? Maybe also the first time you actually heard about this crazy idea of social business, and what is the significance to you at that point?
Well, let me start with a couple of the moments that were impactful for me, and I think highlight some of the benefits of the partnership overall. And one of the first ones was Professor Yunus, when we had you come join our global partner meeting.
Yes.
And as BCG, we're always trying to figure out how to help our clients be the leading edge in building the best businesses they can, but businesses that have the best positive impact on the world. And Professor Yunus challenged our entire global partner group to think even more expansively and really push the boundaries on how we could unlock more than we had before in that spirit of inclusion, that spirit of enabling everyone to come to the table, and embodying a spirit of encouraging our clients to even more help entrepreneurs with the opportunities to build businesses. And it was a really, I think, very pivotal moment in the partnership, because you were able to inspire a large group of our senior leaders who spend lots of time in the corporate world to push the boundaries of the way they operate, both within their businesses and within the ecosystem that they partner in. And I think that was a very beneficial moment for us, frankly, for our clients, but hopefully for you and our clients being more open to that ecosystem that you're trying to build. There's a second moment I'll talk about, which was when I was actually down in Colombia. And it was a moment where our team in Colombia was working with a number of the entrepreneurs that you all support. And we had brought together a convening, and we're doing a bit of a prize around it. And the corporate leaders from the business community in Colombia got together in a room at a table with a number of the entrepreneurs that you all are supporting. And the dialogue that happened, the appreciation in the room on both sides the entrepreneurs being able to see what these corporate CEOs had built and how they'd done it and understood the magnitude of the challenges that they too have. And the appreciation that the corporate leaders had for the entrepreneurs was so palpable and telling and frankly, emotionally heartwarming. And I think made a difference for all of those groups in the room about how they behave, their willingness to interact, their willingness to engage, and a spirit of collaboration more broad than I think either of those groups had actually valued before that day.
That's great to hear. Thanks. And I think maybe Professor Yunus, just to build on that, this is a big mission to achieve, right? To combine business with impact and at the same time also influence how large companies, the corporate CEOs that Wendy talked about, are operating and are challenging their own companies to be more impactful. Where do you think we stand today on that front? Can we call mission achieved, or is there a bit more to do?
Well, I guess it's just the opening. It's just the beginning, and that's where BCG comes out very important for us. We are lucky that we had a secret agent with us coming from BCG. Then we thought we retrain the secret agent and push it back into BCG, see if they can push our ideas into the system. And it worked pretty well. I mean, she could speak the language, because the language is a very important issue. Talking builds up the trust, what kind of talk you talk. Because we are not sure that the kind of things we are doing would be of any interest with the corporates and all the big money makers. So we thought, but we'll talk, we'll explain what we do. So our voice has to be heard. That's what we were planning. And that BCG opened the door. They wanted to hear. And that's where everything began. And how far we went, the history will tell how many steps have been facilitated because of this connection with BCG. And how much impact we have made into BCG thought, I don't know. But I know personally, individuals have been impacted a lot. It's not the system as a whole, which is a big issue, but individuals have very much been involved and understood the point that we are trying to make, and struggling to see how it can be incorporated in the work that they're doing. And that's a big thing for us to achieve, that finding friends within the system and hopefully ultimately impacting on the system as a whole. Because we are challenging everything. We said the whole problem, all the things that we have done around the world, or the bad things we have done, is because of the way we run our business. And that's what the beginning point. And in order to address all those big problems, we have to undo the system, redesign the system. As the redesigning part is very painful, not only physically doing it, but also psychologically and mentally doing it. Because we have been trained, or people who are in the business or into the system, they've been trained in a certain way to think, certain way to look. When you bring it up and say you have to do it a different way, it's quite a shocking thing for them, for anybody. It's not, they're not the only people. Anybody who was asked to do things differently than they're used to doing it is quite a job. But BCG willingly and smilingly wanted to do that. That's what the good thing about it. And how much we have achieved, this history will tell. The relationship that we built between our social business initiatives with YSB and all the things that we have done. There are many, many examples over the 10 years. So 10 years, we have come a long way. That's all I can say. And thank you, BCG.
Thank you, YSB.
Thank you.
I'm going to actually come back to that point to understand how much has changed at BCG because, or maybe as a little flap of the wing of the little butterfly because of the YSB partnership. But first, maybe Professor Yunus has talked about the, well, the necessity to walk the talk, right? And more than ever, we need that. And we will have the chance to talk with one of your long friends, Emmanuel Faber, in the next couple of days. And I think he definitely walked the talk. He really took things into his own hand and founded one of the first joint ventures between Grameen and Danone back in the day. So I would also want to be interested in the view from Saskia to understand, when do you think was a point where we would finally see more walking than talking, and where is that going to go in the future?
Great question, Dan. I can only say when I started in social business now over actually 12 years ago is when I met Professor Yunus the first time. It was really hard to convince corporations to do anything with social impact. They basically said, oh, there she comes, the cute CSR lady. And like CSR was a new topic back in the day. That actually social impact would be something that people would at some point integrate into their core business, as they're slowly but surely some companies are doing today, was really unheard of more than a decade ago. So I think in general, we've made an incredible leap over these last 10 years. Alone, the whole topic over the last 2 years around ESG, the ESG movement that is driven by the financial markets, has been positive, although it's still far away from what we mean with social business. It's just more about not creating more harm, but it's measuring, let's say, how less harm I've created rather than actually positively impacting the world. But still, the fact that boardrooms are finally measuring environmental and social KPIs is already a very good starting point. So I think we've come a long way, but we need to continue, especially as social business movement, to push the needle, to push corporations to not sort of relax on the ESG side of things, but actually move towards creating positive, intentional social impact. So that's where we stand right now. I think the Danone example that has been brought up many times has been an incredibly successful example of a company starting with social business around about 15 years ago, and then coming to a point where even the whole legal structure of that business is what they call an entreprise à mission, so a company that doesn't only create profit, but mainly also create social impact for the world. So I think that is a beautiful example. But we see many other companies that are much more conscious of these topics, like an IKEA, like an SAP, etc., that are moving ahead and taking these topics seriously. So when are we going to see more action than talk? I can't tell you. The only thing that I've seen in the last 2 years is people have made all these great announcements of how they're going to be net zero carbon emissions by year XYZ. So I feel that when their announcements are made, people will have to follow with action because they have no chance. The press is holding them accountable. The shareholders are holding them accountable. So I hope we're at the beginning of the action taking part, but there's a still very, very long way to go.
Daniel, I would double down on that point. I see absolutely the same thing Saskia is talking about an absolute sea change and light years of progress. Now, that being said, we still have light years to go until we're in a world with the 3 zeros. So I am not by any means declaring victory. We have a tremendous way to go before we can do that. That being said, when I have client conversations now, we talk about the potential for sustainable competitive advantage as it relates to inclusive social business. We talk about the changing expectations that consumers have, that stakeholders have, that shareholders have, that governments and regulators have, and how different the environment is they're operating, and the need to create more inclusion, more access, more low carbon, and the pace at which we see them trying to change in ways that actually make sense is so tremendously different, frankly, from what it was 5 years ago, let alone 10 years ago. And in boardrooms right now, we just did a report with INSEAD on organizing and governance for environmental, social, and governance, ESG. While there is huge variation and lots of room to get more sophisticated and effective on that, most significant organizations actually are grappling with this, have individuals responsible for this. And so it is a topic that corporate leaders and corporate boards are grappling with in a very, very different way than they were a decade ago.
All I quickly want to add that we have spent light years in doing things, but you don't have light years left for us. That's the point that we have to repeat again and again, because we have very short window of opportunity in matters of years or decades, few decades. That's all. Either you survive or you're finished. So whatever we have to do it now. There is not much room for delaying it, observing it, learning about it. We don't have that opportunity. We cannot afford that luxury.
Yeah, thanks, Professor Yunus. I actually wanted to ask you also on this topic. More and more, we have this conversation about sustainability as a business case, as a competitive advantage. And I know that you have a critical view on this because of the entire idea of social business supporting also a mindset shift, right? A different way of thinking about it. So I just also wanted to see how do we do this in parallel? How do we do both things? How do we continue to go along the way of pushing the boundary of sustainability on the corporate side, and at the same time also push mindset shift?
We don't have any way of doing proceeding in a soft way because the situation has tightened so much. We have to get to it quickly rather than spend time in the middle of experimentations and other things, and mixing both profit and social and dealing with that 1% social, 99% profit, we are good, etc. kind of thing. So you have to make up your mind what you want. What is it the future you are looking? Future is very close to the present. That's the future we are talking about. It's not future way down the line. So this is something that needs to be done. The designing of the whole system is the most important thing. It's not we keep the system as it is and kind of experiment with it, add a little bit, sprinkle some social around it. That's not going to work. So let's not fool ourselves by doing that. That's the message should go out loud and clear, that the sprinkling all those interesting words into it and suddenly you look good. I don't think we have time for that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and also coming back to changing minds and making up your mind into which direction you want to go. We have so many former BCG colleagues, friends that have been with us on this journey, that you can really see the excitement about the idea of social business in the way that their career progressed after they worked with us or through us. So Wendy, I want to come back to that point. How do you see the changes at BCG because of the partnership of YSB? What has changed for you personally? What has changed for the organization?
Yeah. Well, I think we've learned so much from working with you and working with your partners and the entrepreneurs. And we've actually been able to embed a lot of that thinking within BCG. You know, as Professor Yunus thinks about this, I mean, we are facing a tremendous transformation for the corporate world right now, and how we all engage together. And I think as BCG, we went from a decade ago saying that some of our work is socially oriented, some of our work is going to pay attention to climate, and the majority of our work will be something else. Where we are now is we are striving, and we're not by any means all the way there, we're still working hard, but we are striving to make sure that we are taking a social inclusion, a social impact lens, frankly, a people lens in every piece of work that we do. That we are putting an environmental and a net zero lens into every piece of work we do. And so the work that we do now isn't about, on one side we do social projects and on the other side we do, economic profitability projects. What we're trying to say is, how do we embed that perspective on people and planet and creating the transformation that we need to see so that we actually have a system that works for everyone with our clients. And so it's a very different perspective of embeddedness and uniting some thinking that we need to have to actually create a system that works.
System that works is a good point, because I wanted to pivot to Saskia as well to understand how BCG's work has impacted us. And I think a lot of it from seeing in the last couple of years is probably in creating a system that works for us as an organization, sometimes being a bit more chaotic, but definitely now growing up with the help also of BCG. What else has changed because of the partnership for YSB, Saskia?
But absolutely. I think, when you're in the trenches working on social business around the world, sometimes, we don't have the time to like step back and have the strategic perspective. And I think BCG has often come in and helped us just rethink, where do we stand right now? What are the next steps? What are the big priorities for us? I mean, we know the big priorities, but operationalizing that sometimes is helpful, and having what BCG does best, strategy consulting in that sense. Just to mention a couple of concrete examples, we have always been very focused on measuring the social impact of our own portfolio companies over the years. But one thing that BCG developed together with us, and that's always a co-creation process, was actually, how do we measure our impact of YSB on the portfolio companies, how we're supporting them? And we created kind of a spider diagram to be able to assess that, which has been very helpful for us, and which we've been using ever since. That's been one thing. We've been obviously, we've always been working with corporations as Yunus Social Business in helping them set social businesses up. But BCG has also, let's say 6-7 years ago, sat down with us and said, how do you best approach the corporations? How do you explain to them why social business is important? So helped us also try and speak the language of the corporation. So that's definitely been something that BCG has helped with, to a point where we now really have been able to sort of distill 2 pathways how global corporations can work with social business, namely, one, the whole topic, what we now call social intrapreneurships, when global corporations have teams inside the company that, based on the skills of that corporation, build new social business units or build new social businesses. And 2, and we're going to be launching a report together with BCG at the World Economic Forum next week around the whole topic of what we call social procurement. So when corporations buy from social businesses and thereby, create a much more inclusive and also sustainable value chain for themselves, while just using their normal procurement spend, like money they would spend anyway, but at the same time creating a social and environmental impact. And for the social businesses, obviously generating significant additional revenue. So those are kind of some of the things that, also in partnership with BCG, we've been able to develop over the years. And I mean, many more things, but I'll leave it at that to just share what impact BCG has also had on us.
Saskia, I'd also expand a bit on the social procurement topic that you just mentioned at the end. I think that's so important, because when we do our work with clients and we look at the impact they can have being inclusive within the walls of their organization, or being sustainable or net zero within the walls of their organization, it's important. They have to do it. But honestly, the impact that they can have if they leverage their supply chain, if we actually think cross value chain for corporates, is tremendous. And for most organizations, multifold of the impact they'll have if they think within their own walls. And so the more organizations can think about how they use procurement to improve those social dimensions, think differently about how they're doing that, that is a tremendously important level. And I was really excited about that social procurement work.
What BCG can help us, particularly on the clarity part of the social business, because coming from a background of microcredit. We created that microcredit, designed Grameen Bank, and started doing that. It became very popular. But once it became popular, the microcredit, the word microcredit has been used for exactly the opposite kind of thing. We wanted to make sure we create microcredit as a social business. It's not something to make money for ourselves. It's something to help people and just make it in a way that you sustain your business. It's not something that you want to make profit out of it personally. That was the whole goal of microcredit, helping other people without any intention of making personal profit out of it. And when it became popular, many institutions grew up and became big institutions who were just loan sharks in the name of microcredit. They wanted to make lots of people. They went for IPOs. They wanted stock market. They were buying shares of each other's and so on, and offering shares to the other people, inviting them to share because it's a money-making opportunity by lending money to the poor people and so on. So that's a kind of taking in a wrong direction, the concept in a wrong misunderstanding of the concept, etc. So we may have the same problem with social business business too. Social business has a very clean, clear picture, what we say. That's what we thought. But people are using social business words very lavishly on everything, put the social business in any kind of format. So BCG would be a good institution to make sure that that clarity is maintained, that what we are not saying these are bad things. Simply, we are saying that that's not social business. It's a good thing, but not a social business. Like social enterprise comes in, impact business comes in, and many things comes in. So they're good things. We have no fight about that. Let them do whatever they're doing. But we want to retain the clarity of what we do, the social business, what we mean by social business. So that's where we will be seeking your help. Hopefully, this is the best source that we have for the protection.
That's a great segue, because I was actually also going to go a bit boldly into a bit of brainstorming on what we can do in the next 10 years. Maybe a question, what has to be done? That's the first thing. What has to be done in the business world and in the impact world? How much more business do we need in the impact space? How much more impact do we need in the business space? But then also, just boldly going into the next frontier. What can BCG and YSB do? I think legacy preserving for social business, as Professor Yunus mentioned, and clarity is one thing. What else is on your minds?
I mean, I can start if that's helpful. I think for me, it's really a question of scaling up. I think we've now proven in the last 10 years. I mean, obviously, Professor Yunus has been at this for the last 40 years. So he's 30 years ahead of YSB in that sense, proving that social business already is something that works in Bangladesh. We now, with Yunus Social Business over the last decade, have proven that social business works really in many different countries around the world. So it's really an international thing. And it's also something that corporates are picking up now more and more. And I feel now, I think there are enough concrete examples out there that people can see that this is not just a beautiful idea of a professor from Bangladesh, but it's actually it's a practical thing that exists in reality. So now the question is, how do we actually scale this up at a much more massive level to actually ensure that the normal economy doesn't have that cute little thing on the side, but that social business becomes a much more mainstream part of the economy. And that's really the challenge that we have for the next decade.
Well, for me, I would say 10 years is a big chunk of our future. We don't have many 10 years in future. So we have to do whatever needed to be done right during the next 10 years. And there I was promoting, I keep reminding that we have to keep on creating companies, businesses, which will be 3.0 businesses by every test that they are 3.0 business. Corporate means 3.0 corporates, business means 3.0 business. Zero net carbon emission, zero wealth concentration, zero unemployment, and all this built into the business. We don't have to go and preach them. They're designed like that. Is a 3.0 businesses. So business means 3.0 businesses. So this is how we should be proceeding. The 10 years is the limit by which we have make this transformation. And one way we are trying to do that is creating this idea, the sharing with everybody, and BCG can help us do more magnified 3.0 world, because we can create a 3.0 world only if you have a 3.0 business. You cannot create a 3.0 world with having all kinds of wild businesses to destroy it. So the very root of it is a 3.0 businesses to create a 3.0 world. Unless we create a 3.0 world, the other world will not be sustainable, will not be something that can function with a human being living on it. So we have to realize that and abandon it right away. So first one, in the next 10 years, we have to make sure that we go to the 3.0 businesses. And we have also introduced the idea of 3.0 clubs, inviting all the young people to create 3.0 clubs. 5 young people, and each club is 5 young people, get together and promise to create a 3.0 world. And in order to do that, because it all begins with individuals, it's not with the companies, it's individuals. The individual is the key to the whole picture. So these individuals within the 3.0 clubs, we start with the young people because older people are already done. Their minds are set. It's very difficult to undo their mind. So it's the young people who are in the formation period of their mind. They start thinking that we have to create a 3.0 world for our own survival. Otherwise, you don't survive. our next generation doesn't come into the picture. So they will take it seriously. And one way to do that in the 3-0 club, the members in the 3-0 club, 5 members in each one of them will be promising that I'll be a 3-0 person, meaning that I will not contribute in any way in my life, beginning from today, in contributing to global warming. So I have to find out where I'm doing the global warming, what kind of thing I consume, what kind of thing I use. If I'm using fossil fuels in my life, the first step would be to reduce it slightly today. You'll not wait for tomorrow. If you're making 7 trips a week or whatever trips you're making using fossil fuel, you'll make 5 or 6 days a trip rather than 7 days trip. So that you start reducing, promising that I'll bring it to 0 by such and such time. So I will not consume anything which contributes to fossil fuel. And I will not use a plastic. I will not use it. I'll be 0 plastic person. I'll be 0 this and so on. So I'll become a 3-0 person as a person. And then if we all of us become 3-0 person, then the club becomes a really 3-0 club, that we are people made up of 3-0 persons. And then our goal is to create 3-0 families. Only then we can create this 3-0 world, not with the debates and conferences and so on. This will not create 3-0. They will make promises, they will make numbers, they will make gimmicks out of it. So they continue. It's us individual. Am I a 3-0 person? Why am I talking about 3-0 if I'm not a 3-0 person? If I'm contributing it every day and saying, let's do it by such and such, this is a useless thing. So we have to become 3-0 persons and make 3-0 families, so that in all members of our family, we are a 3-0 family. And continue to be 3-0 family. And we become a 3-0 village. In the village, we do not contribute to global warming. We do not contribute to wealth concentration. We do not contribute to unemployment. That's a 3-0 village. 3-0 cities. We create 3-0 cities. That's the way to create 3-0 world. So how to expand that idea that starts with me as an individual? Am I following the path of 3-0? So 10 years is the period where we have to get it done.
Yeah. I'm wondering whether any mathematician would have ever seen it coming that zeros would be so important today. But I think
zero was always important. This most significant number in the numbering system. So you don't ignore that one.
Well, clearly I'm not a mathematician, as you can tell. Then. But yes, thanks, Professor Yunus. Wendy,
the zero.
Yeah. Wendy, any ideas for the next 10 years on top of what we've just heard?
Well, I will certainly support strongly the need for urgency, the need for scaling, and the need for mainstreaming. I think that is tremendously important to advancing, accelerating, and solidifying and growing the progress that we've had to date. The additional thing that I would just add is in getting to those 3 zeros, and getting to 0 poverty, 0 unemployment, 0 carbon, we know how to do a lot of that, and we can make tremendous progress just with urgency, scaling, and mainstreaming. But there's a piece of those problems that actually are really sticky and really tough. And frankly, certainly on the carbon side, we don't have all the solutions for today. And it's going to require a lot of creativity. So my vision for our partnership is for us to continue to be really pushing that leading edge, really pushing the creativity of the solutions, and how you can bring the partners together to unlock some of that creativity that helps us get not just most of the way there, but all of the way there.
Yeah, just to comment on the creativity part, I agree that the creativity is most important. But I would say creativity is not a supermarket you can go and readily available. It's something you create out of necessity. So I'm saying create that necessity, feel the pangs of it, that I need that. Once it becomes intense, creativity comes out because it's built into human being. So if you're looking for shopping around, it will not be there because nobody did that. So it has to come from us individuals by intense feeling that I need it, I have to get it done. I have to make it sure within 10 years, I change the whole world. How do I do that? And then it will come. Otherwise, it's 10 years is a small time. It's nobody ever done such a thing before. You keep on writing books about it, how it cannot be done, and it will not be done. But you don't have to write the books. You get it done. That's the whole thing. That's the way I look at it. I'm just giving the alternative view of that.
Yeah. No, I think. Thank you for.
It's very much part of human being. Human being achieved all these things because of creativity. And somehow our system has denied creativity. Our system created people to become job seekers and repetition experts doing things in the same way over and over again, abandoning the whole idea of creativity and entrepreneurship. I want to go back to the entrepreneurship and the creativity of individual, making the key of the whole thing is the person, not about the institutions like business and things like that, or even government.
Yeah. And entrepreneurship with a purpose, right? And not the next fancy tech startup, but maybe the next purposeful social business. Would be looking forward to that. Well, that is as good a point to close as any, but I do want to ask you all for one wish for the next 10 years, a personal wish. Where do we stand in 10 years? So what's your wish when we meet again in 10 years? We're all going to be a bit wiser, a bit more grown. And where do we stay? Where do we stand at that point in time?
Well, my picture is very clear. That's what I just elaborated, that the ambition is to become a 3-0 person and help young people to realize that they can change the world by changing themselves, because they are the world. World is not something outside of them, that I go there and there'll be world, I live here, this is my thing. It's not like that. I am the world. If I want to create a 3-0 world, I have to be a 3-0 person. Then world becomes a 3-0 person. So it's a 3-0 person doing that, and gradually everything I do will be touching that business as a 3-0 person, business, family as a 3-0 family, and so on and so forth. How to intensify that, how to bring this to the education system so that our education system set the tone of the young people, what they can do, rather than just go follow the old path and repeat themselves to do the same thing all over again. Repeating doing the same thing all over again will create the same old world all over again. So we have to do it differently to make it a different world, and making a different world will be a 3-0 steps that we have to follow that. Thank you.
I'd say during the pandemic, there was a phrase that became popular, which was, none of us are safe till all of us are safe. Right. And I think that's an incredibly important sentiment. And that was actually, as much as COVID was a tragedy, to me, that was one of the silver linings. I think my wish is around, if we can all realize that if we, in 10 years, we can be more inclusive, considerate, kind, expansive to both each other and the planet, I think then all of our organizations, be they corporations, social organizations, governments, we will be in a much better place together if we can all appreciate that.
And I would echo, I guess, in 10 years, that is around about 2032. That was the time at which we would have reached the Sustainable Development Goals in 2030, which means, well, a world where poverty doesn't exist. And there are, of course, the other 16 goals, but that we've actually achieved the Sustainable Development Goals. And on the level of business, what that means is that I would say maybe 50% are social businesses, or at least deeply ingrained social and environmental KPIs within those large companies. So that would be it. But I think I've already shared in the previous session the main thoughts. Scaling up is now what we need to do.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to that, and hopefully we'll have that same call in 10 years from now. Thanks for joining today, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
And thank you for the partnership.
Thank you. Thank you, Wendy, for your help. Thank you. It's
Yeah.
wonderful to be associated with BCG. Thank you.
Fantastic.